our video on moving the shoulders. So this is a lesson that I think that is very applicable to lots of horses, no matter what the level. So I teach this to really green horses, I teach this to more advanced horses, and I review it all the time with different horses. So we have Bardot here to help us. Now she's pregnant, but she's just starting her second trimester, and she's a type of mare that she really she gets stuck in the shoulder a lot. And although she's trained enough, she can do lateral, shoulder in, haunches in, leg yield, all of that. The big thing with her is getting her shoulders mobile. So if you have a horse that gets stuck in his shoulders, that gets really stiff and leaning, is having trouble balancing in all the gaits, particularly in canter. If you have a horse that gets racing because they're out of balance and they can't take a half halt, you know, some horses will go up with that. All of those things can really be brought back to the basics, the fundamentals that the horse understands and you've taught him, because many people skip this part, that he can move or she can move all their body parts. So that's a fundamental, and it goes back to groundwork. We're going to start it on the groundwork, because there is a warning with this. When you are learning it, if you do have a horse prone to rearing, you want to really get it, the horse understanding it on the ground first, because they make the transfer. And she actually is a horse that is prone to rearing. She hasn't been ridden for a little bit. We're at the end of November here in Canada, so you can see her breathing, my breathing. It's chilly, it's snowing outside right now. She's got the hairy coat, but we had a really bad cold snap. She hasn't been ridden, and you know, we're not working her hard. Obviously, she's pregnant. So I'm hoping today she'll be more stuck than normal for her. If you're reviewing this regularly, if she's in regular work, it does go away, and it's just a minute when you first walk, you stretch her shoulders one way, then the other, and then you might have to review it a couple times, and really that's about it. But if she hasn't done it for a while, I'm hoping she's going to be a bad girl and really help you see how they can get stuck. And because she does understand it, because she has been taught it, and because she does have the capability of advancing, I think we can have a lot of progression through the video. If you've never taught your horse this, and chances are it has had minimal review of this, I've ridden some really advanced jumping horses that still don't have a really clear understanding of this concept. You don't want to teach this all in one day. You want to start with the groundwork, maybe do a step or two under saddle, and then you progress. Okay, so we're going to show you the progression so you know where to go with it, but it's not something that you should expect to accomplish in one day, especially if your horse is really stuck. So how do you know if your horse is stuck? Well, if you're riding and you feel like you can't separate the shoulders from the rib cage, I mean, you can't, but you should be able to be riding your horse's rib cage forward, and you should be able to help them stretch their shoulders this way or help them stretch their shoulders that way. If you touch the reins and their whole body flies that way, they probably haven't been taught, or it needs to be reviewed, how to separate their body parts so that they understand that they can move their shoulders like this with their body still going straight. It doesn't have to be this. And that they understand they can do the same thing with their hips. Their hips can go, their shoulders can go straight, and their hips can go inside. Now, most horses, actually the hips is a lot easier for them to understand because we do enough on the ground to get them to move their hips separately. The shoulders, you know, even leading will improve if you do this. So let's get started with it on the ground. So what we're looking for is we're going to keep her hopefully pivoting on her back end more than taking big steps, and we're going to get her to step across with her inside front. Now I'm just going to move a little bit back so you can see her football. You don't want to do this near a wall. You want to make sure that they understand they have a lot of open space on the outside. And so to do it, I'm just going to ask right at the shoulder at first, okay? I'm just going to ask her to get over. Now she did one step and then she just walked forward, okay? So I'm going to start to get pickier. Sometimes you have to do it with a little more rein contact, but I should be able to just get her to step. That was a backward step. Get her to step in a half moon shape. So she is pretty stuck, which is good. Okay, I'm leaving the camera. And sometimes you just get one step at a time and that's enough. So I'm going to actually use the face too. So we're going to try and do this. Sometimes you have to do it with a little bit of support so that they really get it. So usually I like to have the open space so that they really have a clear understanding of they've got some space to move into. Sometimes you have to do it with their nose a little bit closer to a wall just so that they understand walking forward, that walking forward isn't what you want. Okay, so I'm going to actually hold the cheek piece with her and I'm going to just ask her to step that shoulder. Now that's a shuffle step. She just matched her legs up to where they were, but I've got to be able to control the forward a little bit. So I want her to just go over. That matched, that was a good step. That was a matched step. That was a good step. Okay, I'm trying to keep her in the camera view. So we got one step, one step. So that was only the first step was good in that one. The second and the third, she just met where her leg, other leg was, and it was actually a behind step. So she is quite stuck. Good. Good. And it's actually taking quite a bit of pressure. Now if your horse really doesn't get it, you go with the principle of light and then asking heavier, and you might have to give them a little bit of a sharper smack, a bump, just to get their attention, especially if they're kind of dulled by nature. She's a horse that can get behind the leg and running. It's a little bit her balance, and she convinces her riders to not use much leg and a lot of hand. And this type of horse, I've seen, quite a few mares get this, and I actually love the ride because I get along well with this type. But you have to let them convince you. You have to convince them to let you put your leg on. And you know that there's a very, very strong rule, and it should always be applied no matter what type of horse. The leg is always stronger than the hand. So what these horses tend to do is they get running and pulling down or running off, and you get convinced to not put your leg on because they're so quick. But it's a lot of times it's a balance issue. So this kind of understanding really can help that, because you need to get them just as light in the bridle. Now, a lot of them that are running, they are actually behind the leg. So she can be, my point is, she can be a little bit non-responsive, like you ask for something and she just takes a moment to delay her response. So you want to get them, that was a good step, you want to get them so that they're responding to that immediately with a light touch. Okay, so that's the first step. Now when you've got that kind of going, you want to make sure you're asking for step by step by step. You don't want them flying sideways from one pressure. That's not asking for an aid. That's not asking for it to be controlled this much or this much by how much pressure. That's just flying away. Okay, so the horse is not understanding at that point. So if they do, just ask one step at a time and calm them and repeat that just slowly, right? That you're always taking that time to reassure them afterwards. Okay, so from there, you notice I was pushing on her actual shoulder. Well, we want her to make the transfer of doing it while you're sitting on her. So where you're going to use your leg, if you just simplify your leg aids, is if you use your leg right underneath your hip at the girth, where it should lay, if you're in a good position, that is to control the shoulder. If you bring your leg back a few inches, that's to control the hips. And it's that simple. Here your leg means shoulders, here your leg means hip. Okay, and then you've got the neutral position where both legs work to go forward. Both legs, right? So one leg here means move your shoulder. And nothing is passive on that side. It's just your one leg pushes, she steps over it, this leg is passive, because if you block, it's just like having open space. If you block her with that leg, horses move away from pressure. That's the basis of all training. If you block her with that leg, especially on a horse prone to rearing, you frustrated her. She doesn't understand, okay? The most natural thing that they're going to do when they don't understand is go forward instead of over. So when they go forward instead of over, then you have to just slow them down, half halt, and you have to get more lateral, more sideways than forward, okay? It still has a forward component. Everything should have a forward component, okay? So you're going to ask right here. So just review that on the ground before you get on. And you can follow up with the hand at the shoulder if you need to. So there she just walked forward, right? I didn't get a good step. So sometimes you have to just get a little help with your reins, blocking forward like you would on the back. Good, that was a good step. And tell her she's good. Okay, so I'm going to do it off the other. Okay, can you see the legs? Sort of? Kind of. Let's back up a little bit. And her friend, the other pregnant mare she's calling, that's who's talking. Okay, so right at the girth, push. Okay, she walked forward, so I can't do it with a long rein today. And that's the way she tends to do it. She just treks along instead of doing it laterally. Good, that was a good step. So there I just, like I would under saddle, half halted with the outside rein and pushed her with my hand at the girth. Okay, so that's the review on this exercise on the ground. I'm going to get on her now and we're going to do it from the back, from her back. Then I'm going to show you a couple progressions of how this can apply in other riding, okay? Natural thing. You get on her and she kind of hollows out and trots, right? Already convincing me to take my leg off. Very unattractive frame. So the trick with her is just to start connecting her, and it has a lot to do with the shoulder for her, and it does for a lot of horses. So I take a light feel on the rein, the connection I want. I keep my rein short enough that you know, she's not escaping. Now, of course I don't want her head like that, but you don't pull it down. That's a good way to make them rear. It's just bad riding, right? So I've got to, from this point, let her, get her, from this point, I have to get her to accept my leg. So I'm going to start doing it by the hips. So my leg comes back, my right leg's coming back, and pushing her hips over. Okay, I'm not trying to control her shoulders at this point, because she does hop when she's really stuck. And so the big thing with rearing is they have to actually stop to rear, right? Their hind legs have to stop. So the first thing you need to do when you work on this, if your horse is prone to rearing, is make sure you're mobile through the hips. Okay, just so that you have somewhere to go that you've reviewed if they get a little hoppy. Okay? So now I'm doing it with my left leg. I'm pushing her into the right rein. I'm not asking anything of it. And she's getting all twisted up, but she's starting to take my leg, right? So that's the biggest thing with a horse that runs from your leg, is you got to convince them to take it. So just pushing them from one leg to the opposite rein on the ground, or sorry, not on the ground, when you first get on, is often you know, a really good practice to get them warmed up. Okay, so now going to the shoulders, I'm not going to touch them until I get her in a frame. So all I'm going to do now is quit doing the hips. I'm going to put both legs on, and I'm going to get her to march. Now what she does, she bulges the outside shoulder. This is common in young horses, so you open the rein in young horses and hold the outside, or teach them what a half halt is. Now your standard is pretty low for a young horse, but if you're having trouble steering them, chances are you've lost the shoulder. So doing this ground stuff and this kind of thing is very helpful. Okay, so she just comes down in a decent frame as soon as you stop being intimidated by her bullying when you first get on. Her bullying being inverting, running off, you know. And her and I know each other really well, so it doesn't take long. So here I'm half halting and opening because this is the shoulder she tends to vault. Okay, so right now I'm half halting to keep the shoulder straight underneath her. Okay, I'm not asking it to move yet, but I'm asking her not to vault it. Okay, so half halt, open. And then she just comes in a frame. And it's the timing of it. You don't ever want to do a half halt as long as that, which she does sometimes need. You don't ever want it to be for long. You want to feel a give though. You don't want to just do it and not feel a response. So half halt, and give. And then you give back. But she has to give first, right? If you've applied the aid, you need a response before you give back. Otherwise, you're applying aids and not actually following through, and the horse doesn't understand that. So she's feeling ready now to start asking for the shoulder. Got a little bit of control. She's not bulging in. She's not running off. She's taking my leg. So we're set up to start it. So right now, I'm going to come. I'm going to try and face you. We're going to bend her head just a slightly left. Okay, this is not a walk pirouette. So slightly left. And I'm going to ask her for forward, and my left leg at the girth, we're going to step across. And my right rein is half. Bump, bump, bump. Okay, that was okay, and let her out of it. 1 or 2 steps, especially when you're first starting, is enough, and then let them out of it. Okay, half halt, no forward. I'm slowing down the forward. And now I'm asking with my left leg. There was a good step. There's the hop. Okay, so I had more half halt. Left, so I went just back up a little. Okay, she's got to move the shoulders. You can see her hips are still moving quite a bit. I just want her shoulders. That was a good step. That was what I was looking for. Okay, and I'm going to let her out of it as reward. I can't let her back. The rearing is more that they feel trapped. In many cases, it's because they've felt trapped for a while. With her, she's had 3 foals, not for a long time. She's been a competition horse again. But, way back in her youth, she actually had an accident riding. She's got some stiffness. This is necessary to loosen her up and limber her up. But, there could be a little bit of tinge of pain or stiffness that you're working through, just like you or I. If we went and exercised a whole bunch and got stiff, then the next day, as we warm up, it can be painful. But once you are warmed up, it's okay. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't push through that a little bit, right? So you have to judge what it's from. It's not naughtiness. Unless it's been a confirmed thing for a while, it's likely more a misunderstanding and a lack of forward, and probably somebody didn't totally read the sign, and the horse felt trapped, and it becomes a habit. That can be the case too, okay? So that was with the left leg. Now I'm going to do it with the right. Now because she doesn't tend to bulge her left shoulder, which is now going to be my outside shoulder, I'm going to bend her head slightly right. I'm going to use my right leg to move her over, okay? But my half halt comes from my left rein. This way is often easier for her, okay? So half halt, push. Now you can dig your spur in if they don't listen. She might hop again. She's a good girl. Good girl. I'm going to let her out. Now that wasn't as good as that last step I had off the other leg. So I'm just going to circle and ask again. She gave an effort. I can't keep drilling her. Push over. Push over, that was better. Let her out. Now this is a push and soften. Your timing has to be right, so let it be natural. Don't think about it too much, but you want to feel where that front leg is and ask and over and ask and over. Good. So that was better. Okay? So that's a little bit of the shoulder move. It's not, how it's different than a walk pirouette is the bend. Okay, this is easier. The walk, those weren't really quality steps in that one, not a lot of lateral, but you can ask sometimes for a little bit less lateral or more forward, especially if they're hopping up. That was a good one. Okay. So how a walk pirouette would be different is, here I'm going to have left bend, and I'm going to use my leg to move her over, okay? Whereas we're asking you to have the same bend as the leg you're using, and it's just a little bit easier for the horse to understand initially, okay? Now how this can help with your balance, we're going to progress. her do the same kind of thing. Now you can't do the shoulder move in trot and canter, but you can show them the flexibility, okay? So because you've taught them that well in walk, when you go forward to trot, you know, she tends to get a little on her forehand leaning. We keep the circle fairly small. So what you can do is you can do a little counter bend, the flexibility, just a slight counter bend. And I'm using my left leg right here, pushing her over, like I'm doing the shoulder move for half a circle, and then I'm going to stretch for half a circle. Okay, now I'm going to, so this is just straight, or slight inside bend. Up there. Now I'm going to ask for a little counter bend, and left leg a bigger, pushing her, pushing her, pushing her, so that she's leading the circle with her right front leg. Okay? You feel this right shoulder kind of lead the circle. Okay? And then let her straight. Lead it, lead it, lead it, lead it, and let her straight. And keeping the rhythm of it. Now we're going to do it the other way. First, I just establish my circle. I'm going to counter bend her and push with the right leg, 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 push with the right leg. Halt. Just bullying through instead. I got to stay tall in my position that I don't get tipped forward and on my hands. Double check that the pressure is always still light, that your leg is stronger than your hands, but it's a coordination of asking with your leg and catapulting with your reins. Connect. Okay? So that is a nice balancing exercise to get them really light and between your aids in trot. Now we can try a little bit of shoulder in. Actually, we'll do leg heel first. Coordination, but it's a great warm-up for leg heel. Notice in leg heel, it's just a slight flexion maybe, but it's not head right. You can't have their head turned, it still should be in front of their chest. You can't have their head turned like that and have a leg heel. It just doesn't work. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to just add it to the canter. So now that we've done it, just on the ground, there. So now it's all fine-tuned, right? Backwards. Okay, you can check it out. You can ask more of it once it's warmed up. That's good. Now that we've got her warmed up in trot a little bit, we're going to add the canter. Now, she's a horse that treks along on her forehand. When you want to balance the canter, you want to think about getting their withers up. Now, to get their withers up, you have to have control of the shoulders. They have to feel a little mobility. Now you see the jumpers warm up in the big ring and they're turning their horse's head from side to side. Now, the sophisticated eye and the really good ones are seeing that they're pushing their horse from their inside leg to their new outside rein, and they're just changing it. Now that becomes a habit really easily, and people that are watching and aren't really understanding, they think that they get on and they should just be able to do this. Well, this is seesaw and it's terrible, but your horse should be able to flex his neck muscles. So going back to the canter, now we're going to do the same thing we did in trot in canter, but you're going to think about lifting the wither, sitting tall, pushing the hind end more underneath them, and as a result that the horse, their balance tips from slightly on the forehand, if these, my fingers are their head and shoulders, to maybe level, and then one day a little bit up. Okay, so they can sit on their haunches and do a canter pirouette one day, right? And even if you're not going to do it, this is just great. If you're just going to trail ride your horse, this is great for getting gait. It's great for understanding that kind of thing, okay, and understanding how to ride your horse better. So we're going to do it in canter. This is probably the most useful thing for balancing a horse, okay, that I've learned to help a horse gain strength with a more balanced canter. I love the naturally balanced canters. This can still be a great exercise for them. And it's just working on the independence of the aids. For a horse like her, it's a perfect thing to practice. Okay, so we're going to do that. It's probably not going to be 100% pretty. Now she has a hard time, and a lot of horses will, holding the inside hind, jumping through a canter that starts to get balanced. So you have to keep your inside leg active enough that they keep their inside hind jumping. Okay, jumping so that it stays a 3-beat canter, jumping so that they get stronger. But if, like in her case, she hasn't been ridden, she's pregnant, we're going to be easy on her. We're not going to ask for a full circle. We're going to ask for a few steps at a time, okay? She's probably going to follow to trot one way a little bit, and it's a strength thing. And your horse might do that when you first teach it that. That's okay. Just know that it's a strength thing. Don't get tough on it. Just next time, gauge how much you got before they trot. And then it's a great marker so that you do this exercise over the next few months, and then you realize that, hey, I can do a full circle now. It's a great gauge of how much stronger they're getting. Okay? Now, see there, she starts out again like that. That's just her thing. She starts out like that every time. She's been ridden in that manner too long, too much of her life. She's an opinionated mare that likes to be having things a certain way, her way. But she's sweet. I like that. The thing about mares is you have to learn to work with them. That's true for any horse, but mares are just very honest. I love riding mares. People have, strong opinions against them, but, I love the honesty. She was saying, this is how I start. That's fair. Okay. So the first few transitions in canter, especially which hasn't been ridden, tend to be hollow. We're not going to worry about the transition so much as helping the balance. So I'm just going to do the transition. And I'm going to get in my 2 points, so I'm light on her back. That's just my comfort level too. But get off the horse's back once in a while. Don't always sit, especially if they're strong. Get off and let them have a break. So now I'm going to counterbend them. This leg starts to work. Counterbend, push. Counterbend, push. Counterbend, push. Counterbend, push. And if you can bring her around the turn to a jump like this, you've got her in a better balance than if I let her just raise around. This is the normal way of going. Okay, so counterbend, push. Counterbend, push. Counterbend, push. Remember her head should still be in front of her chest. Left rein push. Left rein push. She was trying to bulge through there. Left rein and push. And now soften. Let her just go straight. You see that change? And we're going to ask for the next side. one jaw, this is often the issue. And people put draw rings on to try and soften them, and then they just pull their head from side to side. But if you get them listening to the shoulder, to the hip, and listening to your leg, you can push them around, and their head just starts to get more from it. Okay? So really good. So that's kind of the premise of it. You can see how then the application of it can be good for shoulders in. Different lateral half pass is the same as taking the transfer from moving the shoulders to walk. The half pass is taking the bend from leg yield and changing it to the opposite bend. But the premise of the legs, the horse still needs to move away from the pressure that you apply. Okay, so. One wasn't completely, but just warming up, you could start to see how controlling the shoulders to keep them straight and then ask for the hips to go sideways, haunches in, or asking the shoulders to turn and asking the hips to stay straight, shoulder in. It starts to build on all these principles. So she was a great model for us because she started out quite stiff, ended up quite fluid. I would do more transitions with her. I would do more different, like the exercises. I don't want to do much more with her today. She's not in shape. She's pregnant. She doesn't really need to be ridden. It's cold outside, so I don't want her to get too sweaty. But you can start to see how the application of one simple idea really applies. Now, just taking it to leading, how many people have led a horse that takes their nose this way, pulls you, and pushes you off with their shoulder? It's the same thing to fix it. Their head should be curled around you. You should be able to push their shoulders away so that if something spooks them, one, they're not going to bolt away and grab the nose bend and have all the leverage, and two, this shoulder doesn't hit you and knock you off, okay? You should be at their shoulder and you should be able to move it, even for simple leading and handling. Your horse should have that knowledge so that they're safer and more pleasant to be around. So I hope you've enjoyed this. We have an exercise that we're going to put on the screen that can really adapt this stuff. When you progress, you can do straightness down a quarter line, transition to walk, shoulder move, cross the short side, always a few feet off the wall so they don't ever feel trapped. Or you could do it on the track if you're only moving them to the inside, which is really what you should only do. To the inside is more welcoming. And then, so you're just doing transition, shoulder move to turn, 90-degree turn, transition to trot, transition to walk before the turn, 90-degree turn with the shoulder move, transition to trot, transition to walk before the short side, or you could just keep walking the short side. And you can progress that to do it even where you canter and transition to walk. All sorts of variations on how to mix that up to just practice it on a daily basis, even if it's only for a minute or two, or just check that you have the mobility that you'd like or not. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this. I want to wish you the very best with your horse, and if you have any questions or comments, or you would like to give us some feedback, please add your comments below the video on the YouTube channel. Thanks very much.